almost good afternoon, everybody. It's not quite midday, but I thought I would let you in because I know being on the other side and having a blank screen isn't particularly friendly. Welcome, and we will give it till sort of midday to arrive. And I think you can unmute if you want to chat before we start. I will say it is recording at the moment, but if you want to sort of be visible, great. Otherwise, I'll manage all the sound and vision in a moment, and we will start at midday. I'm expecting about 31 people to. Okay, thanks, Rod. Um, I don't know which buttons I'll press. I'll leave it, but do feel free to chat, and there's Q&A available as well. But I'm expecting about 31 people to attend, which is why we'll definitely leave it till closer to midday to let you all come in. If you've got anything you want to ask in the meantime, stick it into chat and I'll respond, and we'll go from there. I know Helber will, or we will, I will say share the slides after the event, and we'll try and have a Q&A towards the end as well. So that function is available from the top of your screen. So please do feel free to ask questions through that or the chat, and I'll monitor both as we go through this session. So we'll just give it another minute or so, because I think the time on my PC matches the time on my watch. At one stage it was out by about 2 minutes, which completely confused me for a little while, but I think everything sorted itself out. So we'll give it another minute and a half. I've just started the thread of conversation in the Q&A chat channel area, so that if you can see that, that's where, if you want to post questions, you can do. Right, so my clock has just turned round to midday. We will start because I'm sure we're all extremely busy, and having just chatted to Helber, we are, everyone is incredibly busy at the moment, which is great. But quick introductions for those of you that don't know me to start with, and then I'll hand over to Helber and with the rest of the webinar. So I'm Dawn Rossell. I am the National Operations Manager for the Controls and Skills Authority. I've been in place since the beginning of October, and working with the regional leads, so Rod and the other regions, as well as the communities of practice and the rest of the business, in driving the business forward, bringing members on, bringing company members on, and organising the conference. I will talk briefly about the conference at the end of this webinar, but that's just a brief introduction to who I am and my role here. As I said for couple of minutes ago, I'll kind of manage the chat and the Q&A, and try and keep everything on schedule and on time. So Helber, welcome, and I'll hand over to you. I'll mute and myself and put the camera on blank, and hand over to you. You should be able to unmute.
Yes. So thank you. Good morning, good afternoon for everyone here. Thanks for the opportunity. It's my pleasure to be in this webinar. When we will be talking today about cost estimates, about cost engineering, and how we can build a strong cost model. Before we go for our presentation, just very quick about myself. So my name is Helber Macedo. I'm a cost manager at Baker Hughes for subsea projects. We develop cost estimation for subsea equipments around the world. And also I have a book about cost engineering, cost estimation, cost control. I am certified by AACE, and I have been working the nuclear and oil and gas industry for above 18 years. And I love this topic. I love numbers and I love this topic, and have been writing papers and trainings for not only Petrobras, but for other institutions as well. Okay, so what's the idea here? We will cover, because of the time, I select 10 topics, 10 areas um, that I believe that we need to address to have a strong cost model. So in the end, I will try to answer your questions. You can type in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can address in the end. And the number one of the big area that we need to improve, and I believe that will not be a surprise, is about the scope definition. So one of the critical topics or areas that we need to improve is to ensure that it's clear the scope that we are doing, building our cost model. When it's not clear the scope or is missing something, for sure the probability to have a cost overrun during the execution is high. So what is the scope definitions? Everything that we need to have in our cost model, in our cost estimation process, to ensure that I will be able to execute my construction, to build my process, my asset, um, matching the requirements for my client. And how to improve, how to ensure that my scope is correct, is everything is there. Well, I really believe, and I think that overall one of the problems that we can see in the companies is because or we don't have a procedure, or people are not reading the procedure. So first, we need to have a clear process, and we need to have a procedure that reflect that process, and people should be able to know, to read, and everyone the same page. So how we will curate our scope in our cost model, in our tool. Then we need to have a methodology, a technician to do this thing. So for example, you can have a checklist to ensure that you include your facilities, your energy um, for that thing, for that your asset. Have you included all the indirect costs? Have you included your engineering? Have you include all your material? Have you include all, if you are owner, all things that you need to consider for the owner itself? So you can have a checklist to ensure that have you include all these things. You can also try to have a surveys that you will double check with some stakeholders to ensure that everything is there. Another area that is important, and overall we are not so good, is about the lessons learned. We will discuss a bit more about this, but we should have a system and a process that everything that happened in the past, you are considering again, you are checking if you uh, have incorporate that thing, because if not, you do the same mistake again and again. So how you should do this thing? You can have a tool, but also you need to have a process to the people to populate the lessons learned, and then to check if the lessons learned is incorporated in your current cost model. Another important thing is about the clarification. When we talk about the tender phase, that we have interaction between the contractors and the client, we should have a process to not only to send the questions to get the answers, but how I am incorporate these clarifications in my cost model. Because the reason could be I have a question, I have an answer, and it's not fully populating my cost model. I'm not considering that I need to change one material or that I need to change one supplier because of that answer, that feedback that I got. And finally, we will discuss a bit more about this thing later. Is about change. Okay, we always have change happen every day, all the moment, and we need to have a process to ensure that we incorporate the change in our cost model. So, continues about this topic. The second factor that affect a lot the quality of our cost estimations is about the change. Change will be happen all the time, and we need to consider it in our process. Um, so how um, we can incorporate this thing? So because the time I'm not providing examples, but I saw many cases in my career that um, we have an initial assumption, so that we will use supply A, then someone decide that they will go to supply B, but it was not communicated for all the stakeholders, and then in the end our cost model was not updated, or was a change in one strategy that, for example, initially we were not considering overtime, but because now our schedule we need to consider overtime, but this information was not reflected in the cost model. So change will be always happen, but we need to have a process to incorporate the change. And typical change, like I said, could be a new requirement for the client. They are keeping update the design, and then they said that they need to have a different type of material. Or we decide that we go for a different supplier because it's cheaper. Or, like I said, could be a change in the strategy that we initially not have overtime. Now we will consider overtime. How to mitigate this thing? Number one is important that you have a revision control. You should have a revision control in your cost model. And then the tool that you are using to build your cost model, um, it will can help a lot you if the tool has the functionality to have this revision control. And basically this should be the process, okay? So I'm building my cost model. When I finalize my cost model, I have my revision A, or could be daily or weekly that I have my revision. And like I said, we always will have variations. We have changes happen all the time. And then I should have a process that when I have a change, so something happen, I have a new code, or I have a new clarification coming, or I have a new feedback internally for the operation team, for another team, and then I will apply my process. This process could be I will request an approval for someone, some manager, someone that I will request approval. Check should I incorporate this change? Then yes, it's okay. You can incorporate this change. Could be one channel that you have everyone the same channel teams, for example. Then you can align the change that is happen. And after the change is approved, you will be communicate for all the functions that need to know that these changes happen. And then, of course, the cost model will be updated and we will increase the revision because then I will be able to make the comparison between the change between revision 0 and revision number 1. The next factor is about assumptions, constraints, and what we are not including in the cost model. So here is very important that we have historical information, that we are recording what is included, but also what is not included. Um, and we need to explain why I'm including that thing or I'm not including that stuff. So example of things that I need to record and should be clear. For example, when I'm doing the handover, when they're moving from the planning phase, from the tender phase to the execution phase, I need to be clear for everyone how I build my cost model and what's the assumptions that I did. Because if they change the strategy or another thing, for sure, it can impact the cost. So one of the things, like I said, is the execution strategy. I need to tell and it should be clear for everyone that I am not considered overtime or that I'm not considered the guys we work at night. Um, I need to be clear that I'm considered as the guy will what's the work conditions that they will work. They need to get the license to start the work, and then it will have a delay to start the work. I need to consider and be clear what my assumptions to build my schedule, to build my histogram that I'm using to build my cost model. The weather conditions, how many days I'm considered to have rain in my site, what's the methodology that I use to do my cost. So I'm trying to be very accurate. I'm going using the bottom up line by line, component by component, or no. For this timeline, I'm using parametric equations. I'm using a different methodology, because if I'm using a conceptual methodology, for sure my accuracy will not be the same that if I'm going for the bottom up. And finally, what's the reference that I'm using as well. It will be important to know what's the reference that I'm using to build my cost model. So how to improve? How to ensure that you are um, being very clear for everyone what the assumptions that you have to build your cost model is to use the base of the estimate. What's the base of the estimate? It's a document that you will build since you start your cost estimation process. Then you will tell what's the team that work in that model. You will be able to tell what's the methodology that we are using, what's the assumption, so how you build that cost model. Or for material, I'm considering quotes from supplier A, supplier B. For the labor, I'm using the reference uh, from the previous year. How I'm doing the escalation, you will tell the history, what's happened. Oh, I changed from supplier A to supplier B because supplier A was not able to match my schedule. So it will provide a historical and a strong information for the handover, because during the execution, they need to know how you build your cost model. And for sure, if you are not following what was the assumption during the planning phase, during the tender phase, we can have cost overrun. And also, it will be good, for example, for claims, because it will be clear how you build your cost model. The next factor is about the stakeholders. Okay, it's very important that you have all the functions knowing, and together the cost estimator is a guy that make a lot of questions, good questions, but is also is a guy responsible to be integration, to contact with people, to meet people, and they need to interact with finance team. They need to interact with supply team, procurement team. They need to interact with engineer. All these guys we need to bring to the table. We need to bring for the meetings and engage with them to ensure that what has happened, and how to improve, how to ensure that all the functions are knowing what has happened. Because if they are not coming, they used to no one ask me that. For example, I had one case, my previous company, that we didn't engage with the operation team. And what is the big problem? The valves in the refinery, we need to have access to the operator to go and open, close the valves. No one was talk with them about this. And then what happened that for some valves, we missed the access. So if we are bringing these guys to look the scope, to ask questions, to review, it could avoid that. Then we discover this thing late and we have a cost overrun during the execution. So how you can do this thing? Meetings, gates, when you have all the leadership for different functions to approve that cost model. Checklist, I love checklists. You can ensure that in a checklist you follow the step A, B, C, D of your process. Surveys to contact with guys, action trackers. So what I can tell the success case that I saw in the execution, uh, of course, I cannot say that 100% will be of this, but this is when I saw success, this thing in the screen is happen. So we saw all the functions working together as a team. There is a big risk when you have silos. Everyone is in your specific church and we are not talking together and work as a business, as one team. It make a lot of difference. Um, Factor number 5 is about escalation. So, um, escalation, there is a correlation with inflation, but escalation and inflation, they are not the same thing, okay? Inflation is one of the factors that affect um, um, inflation is one of the factors that affect escalation. So to understand escalation, we need to see that inflation, it will increase the cost of my goods, of my services, but also could be about engineer change. Now we need a new requirement that was released, that all the material now should be super duplex. We cannot use more carbon steel. So for sure it will impact the cost of that equipment for that good. Um, well, I believe this is nowadays we don't need talk so much about this because it's so clear what is happening around the world. So it's not only inflation, one decision, political effect that one guy can take can impact around the world. No, I think that is clear that everyone can go in the news and understand this topic here. Supply and demand. So if you have more supplies coming, for sure, maybe the cost is going down, but in the opposite direction as well. If you have few supplies, the cost tends to increase. No, and I will give an example. Pandemic is one clear example that we can say, but also could be hurricane, another thing that can affect a lot. So it's not only the inflation. And how we can incorporate escalation in our models. Okay, it's very simple. You should have an index, and you can buy this index. You can go in some institutions to provide this index. This index could be per cost category. So for raw material, for labor, for I don't know, your facility. So you can have different index, but basically always will be this way. You have your cost and you multiply by your index. So you have your index from date A to date B, and you will multiply your index by your cost. So in this example here, I have a pump cost in 2022, and I know my index for that period is 15%, and I multiply, I get my cost. And this chart here is just trying to show hypothetical case that you can see the curve um, of inflation curve, and you can see that in the reality, the cost of the pump is much higher than the inflation. And the reason is because you have engineer changes happen in the design for that pump that is bringing the cost increasing higher than the inflation. So it's showing the escalation. Inflation is one factor, but it's not only inflation can explain the cost increase. You need to understand other factors as well. Okay. Factor number 6, um, I can see that the questions I will try to answer in the past. Okay, in the end. Okay, guys. Um, Factor number 6 is about work breakdown structure and cost breakdown structure. What I saw case is that we don't have a standard work breakdown structure and cost breakdown structure. So my recommendation is we should have a standard work breakdown structure and cost breakdown structure. For sure, the WBS will be different project by project, but the top levels should be the same. I should have here my on-site, my off-site. I should have here in my on-site what will be my asset here. So the top level should be a standard. And why this is important? Because then for across the regions in any project, you will know where you will find equipment A or equipment B. So you ensure that it is more clear to see what is missing, or um, make comparisons. You can make integration for the tools as well. So my recommendation that we should have standards, and it will also help to make integration in systems, in the systems that we are using for the execution, for example. So another interesting thing, so my suggestion is to have the standard WBS, and here I'm not showing the CBS, but as well the CBS should have a standard. And another good idea is to have a dictionary. So what is the objective here? You will tell, and something that you can think that is basic, but sometimes we are making errors because um, everyone is not in the same page for the basic stuff. So in this dictionary, you will tell um, what should be included in on-site level, what should be included in off-site level, what should be included here in utilities. So it will be clear for everyone what should be included in each level of my WBS. The next factor, factor number 7. So like I said, I will go 10 factors. Okay, will be our idea for today. So factor number 7 is about the database. So one thing that I believe that we need to spend time is trying to improve our cost database. If your cost database is not good, you will spend time looking for new reference. You will need to all the time spend time to do normalizations, and probably it will not help with the cost accuracy. So my recommendation is that you look your database and you spend time trying to remove outliers, doing the normalization to ensure that all the costs as in the same date. So you are applying escalation. Um, every cost you need to know where it's coming from. So what is the currency? I saw case that have errors because one cost reference should be in pounds and we are considering dollars. Um, the unit, I saw case as well of errors because the correct unit should be centimeters and we are using meters or another thing. So you need to ensure the quality of your cost database. If your cost database is good, it will save time for you when you are building your cost model, and you improve your cost accuracy as well. Um, the next factor is about turnaround. Okay, so what was the idea here? Um, I believe that there's a direct correlation when we don't have enough time and the miss and errors in the execution. We are living in one environment, there's a lot of pressure to do very fast the things, very short timelines, and how to mitigate this thing. So this is not new, uh, but you can find software in the markets that able to do what I'm proposing here. But the idea here is to build what I call it cost configurators. What is this thing? So the idea of the cost configurator is a mix of two methodologies, the conceptual methodology and the bottom-up methodology. Why? Because the conceptual methodology is a quick method you can apply very fast, so save your time. And the bottom-up, you have a good accuracy because you are doing your cost part number by part number or component by component. And here I'm trying to give an example. Of course, this is a fake example, okay? It's just to try to explain the idea. Um, in the oil and gas industry, the flare is a very important equipment, okay, for safety and also for the environment to burn the gas before go to the atmosphere. So this is 3 different types of flares that we can have in the refinery. And what was the idea here? I have been working with the engineers to define the cost drivers. What's the factors that will affect my the cost of my flare? So hypothetical here, I define 4 factors: the type, the instrumentation, if I will have instruments to measure pressure, flow, blah blah blah. The field, if it's a green field or brown fields, if I'm starting from the zero and I need to have utilities and blah, 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 and what the capacity of the flare. Then how I build this configurator. For the type that is most important factor, I'm using bottom up. So I'm using historical information from recent cost models, recent cost estimates that I know the total cost for each type. And so I have a very good accuracy of this number. And for the other factors, I'm using the factor methodology when I apply a factor. So if I have an automation, I need to increase 10%. If it's ground field, I need to increase 25%. Then using this information here, I build a tool. And the guy can select what the inputs, the key cost drivers, and you get the cost. Of course, the accuracy will not be so amazing, but because it's based in one bottom up, it's good for initial analysis of different scenarios that I need to do when I may be starting my engagement with my client. So very quick, I can just click, 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 I get my cost. This is the idea. Another thing, another factor that is important is about contingents. So factor number 9 is about contingents. Contingents is something correlated with risk and uncertainties. I can have contingents for the schedule and I can have contingents for the cost. Here is more talk about cost contingents, and I can have also an integration between cost and the schedule to calculate the contingents of both together. So the idea for the contingents is to cover uncertainties, and uncertainties are correlated with my planning because planning is based on assumptions. What is the index that I'm using to calculate the duration of my activity? Just one example. Uncertainties are correlated with my cost reference. So if I'm using a reference for 2 years ago, probably there's some uncertainty in that cost. Also, uncertainty is correlated with my methodology. If I'm using maybe a parametric equation, maybe my accuracy will not be so good. So I have some uncertainties correlated with my methodology. So contingency to cover this type of thing, uncertainties, but also contingency is to cover risks. So I can have an accident when I'm doing my transportation for one equipment. So it could be a risk that I can damage my equipment. And then, of course, you have a cost. So how we can calculate contingency? There are several ways that you can calculate contingency. One could be your company has a procedure, has a standard that say, look, for scenario A, you use 5%. For scenario B, you use 10%. For scenario C, you use 3%. So this is when you have a procedure that you tell, consider some conditions, what will be the percentage that you use for contingency. The second methodology is based on your experience, or maybe a group of guys that say, look, based on my experience, based on my knowledge, I believe that we need 5% or 10% of contingencies. The next one is about parametrics. So I have an equation to calculate the contingencies. I will be honest, I never used this third one, but it's possible. This is what you can find in the books, that you have an equation to calculate your contingency. So we include some capacity, some factors, and it will provide the contingency. And the last one, and this is my view, the best methodology when we are arriving in the tender phase, for example, because in the initial phase, maybe you don't have the maturity to use risk analysis. But when you have more maturity, you can use the risk analysis, is the way that you should use to calculate your contingency. And here we'll just use 1 minute to tell, this is one coming from the book that I mentioned before. I have a chapter in my book only talk about probabilistic cost estimation. So I believe that one thing that, and I'm starting to see companies moving in this direction, is to stop to use the deterministic methodology when you have only one number, to go for a range of numbers, a probabilistic approach. And so I have a chapter in the book only talk about probabilistic methodology. And basically, what is the idea here? You will do our bottom up. or another method, and you will calculate your number. Then you make an assessment to measure your uncertainties and risks. Then you will run your Monte Carlo simulation, and then you will calculate your contingency. Here, of course, because the time is not going in all the levels of details, but what you get this type of chart when you have your cumulative probability curve. And for all the interactions, for thousands of cost estimations that you are doing to build this thing. In this case here were 5,000 simulations. And then you will be able to see, okay, my deterministic number from my bottom up is here in this point of my curve. So we're showing that around 40% of the scenarios, so 40% of the simulations, when these risks is happen and when they have variations during the uncertainties, um, I have 40% probability to have enough money to execute my project. Sounds low. So if I want to increase the probability to avoid a cost overrun, I can add a contingency and maybe increase the probability to have enough money for 50%. Or if I want to move to 60, I need to increase my contingency. So basically, this uh, uh, is the idea of the probabilistic methodology. Very, very quick here in few minutes. And my last factor that I would like to share with you guys is about the cost review and cost validation. So what is the idea here? Okay, we need to have a good process to cost review and cost validation, because then also it can protect us for the bias, for the very optimistic scenario. So one of the things is the guys that doing the cost estimation should be a different guys that is doing the review. Uh, Next thing, you should have benchmarks. You should have metrics that you can help you to ask good questions. Why my rate between direct cost and indirect cost is so high in this tender when make comparison with my previous projects? Another thing, if you don't have time, you need to focus in the critical, in the most expensive, or in the most important items. And finally, what I said is very helpful if you have checklists to double check that you are following all your process. And finally, I would like to give one thing that I have been working and have been developing the last few years is about the Power BI. This is again is hypothetical Power BI. This is not a real Power BI. It's just one that I created just to show in the presentations. But the idea is that you have your database, your cost model here uploaded in the BI, and you will be able to navigate and to see better the information and get more details. So you can go and drill down and trying to understand better your data, your numbers. You can also include here your benchmarks, and you can go and make the comparison with previous projects. So it's one way that you can in one go you can have everything. And what's the benefit of this is because, for example, if you have a good process to build your Power BI, it saves your time. You don't need to spend time preparing slides. You just link the BI with your database and you have everything done. You can share in advance with the guys. It could be published, and all the stakeholders, remember that all the functions, they will be able to go and to analyze previously the data. You can make comparison different days, different weeks, and see the difference what has happened week by weekly when you are building your cost model. There are a lot of good things when you start to use business intelligence to validate and to review your costs. If you, I'm always writing posts on LinkedIn. One of my previous posts was about this topic, how to build. Not, I'm not focused so much in build dashboards, because this thing you have a lot of things in YouTube, but it's the process to build your dashboard when you think about cost estimation. Um, so the summary is, we need to have a clear scope definition. We need to know what to talk about. We need to have a standard WBS and CBS and integration between them. The BI can help a lot, can save time, can provide information for everyone, can make comparison for different scenarios. You need to have a process to change. It's very helpful if you have this thing I have been doing. It's very interesting when you have workshops and you bring everyone different functions to work together. Another thing, base of the estimate, to ensure that all your assumptions is there, all things are there. Database, you should have a strong database. Contingents, you need to calculate properly contingents, consider risks and uncertainties, and the probabilistic cost model could be one way to do this thing. Escalation, you need to consider escalation in your model for the present and for the future if it's required as well. And finally, the configurators can be one way that you can improve your accuracy and provide a quick estimation. Last thing before we finish here, I'd like to talk about the book. So, like I said, I published the book. We have a promotion here by the publisher of this, by the site of the publisher, 40% until 10th of May. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Letting me, I apologize if I'm late.
Helber, you're not late. You're actually doing pretty well because it's only not quite 22:01. So we've got some time. I had scheduled this for an hour. There are a variety of comments and questions that have come through. So thank you everybody for that. If I go through the questions rather than the chat first, let's do the questions. And there's two questions in from Vladimir. I will read them. I don't know if you can see them, Helber, but I'll read them out to you.
I can see the questions
Okay.
about inflation, future inflation. Well, if you don't have an index, can I start it? Do you want to read the question first, or how you want to procedure here?
So let me read the question in case people can't see it. So the escalation question: what if government don't want to admit inflation and official indexes are much lower than real inflation? Do we index the index for the difference?
Okay, I saw one question before, so let me read again this.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So there's one more question as well about the future inflation. So when you talk about future, okay, if you don't have an index that can support you, what you can try to do is to work in your company with the experts, and here could be the procurement guys or the engineer guys together, and they will need to define the index. They will need to define what do you believe that will be the index for 2026, for 2027, 2028. What I saw in my previous company, if we don't have an index, or we work with the team to build this index, or we try to create a trend curve. What I'm trying to say, the trend curve, you are able to see your past curve of the index, okay? So then you can try in Excel, create what will be the equation to see what will be the future index. Of course, both methodology, when you do based on an expert opinion or based in the equation, you will have something that the accuracy will not be so good. But this is the two ways that I saw. You can build a curve based in the historical, or you can, together with procurement team, together with the engineer team, define what will be the index. Okay. Then if the government doesn't admit to inflation,
okay, then there was one below that as well. Can we see example of BOE? Is there a template, or it must be implemented in each company differently?
Well, I cannot share my templates because I have my agreements with the companies that I work in the
Fair
past.
enough.
But I can tell what I'm expecting to see in the BOE. Okay, I'm expecting to see in the BOE, for example, a summary of your cost. So in the end, what was your cost? So probably in your cost you have a breakdown by labor, by material, by equipment, by margin, by contingents. So I'm expecting to see a summary how you build your cost, number one. Second thing, I hope that in your base of the estimate, you will show how is your cost reference. How you build your cost reference. You are using the numbers from purchase order from SAP. You are using uh, purchase orders from Oracle? Are you using quotations for supplier A, supplier B? So you should be able, what is the cost reference that you are using? This is a second thing that I hope that I can see in your base of the estimate. Number three is about communications. Overall, guys, one of the big problems that we have is communication. We're not communicating so well, okay? Or you think that people understand, but they are not understand. So one important thing that I'm trying to have in our base of the estimate is notes. So all the key assumptions, for example, I told Rod here from from the institution that I will be here doing the presentation 1 p.m., not lunchtime, not 12. So if it's not clear that I mentioned this thing and I missed this event, I will not be able to prove, look, but I said this thing to you that it will be not 12, it will be 1 p.m. So we are trying to have clear shot communications for the key assumptions um, because my memory is terrible. So we need to be able to have the historical information, who approved um, and when was approved. So these things about notes as well is very helpful. Key emails, you don't need to save all, don't need to paste all the emails, but you can have links for key emails. um, Another thing, in my case here, I'm using, like I said, the Power BI to do the cost review and cost validation. So we have a link for the last BI that was approved in the tender phase. So we have all the information that was validated and approved in that BI as well. What else that is important? So all these assumptions that you are using to build your cost model, you should have. And how we are doing? We are using Excel. The template is in Excel. There's a lot of tabs, and each tab you will be one tab for material. What's the assumptions? One tab for the cost summary. One tab for the communication. One tab for the cost reference. This is the way that I have been using.
Lovely, thank you. There's a couple of comments. John, I can see that you're trying to put your hand up, but I'm not able to unmute or unscreen you, which is if you could identify what it is you're wanting to ask in the chat, that would be really helpful, please, or as a Q&A. There's a couple of other comments in the chat, but I just had a question just come in. Which I think is interesting because it relates to skills and the challenges to some of us think that skills are being lost or not being lost. So the question is, I was trained that in presenting a BOE, a clear executive summary is an essential to demonstrate your estimate is worthy. Has this skill been lost? Can you see that?
Well, I'm trying to see is in the key and read the question. Sorry.
It's right at the top of the questions.
Okay,
so,
okay. Well, I think that one of the challenges is we need to keep training the team, okay? And I think that the challenge, because sometimes the basic stuff we are missing, we are missing to learn and how to do the basic things. So I totally agree that this is a basic thing, but we are losing the basic thing because maybe we're not training and try to refresh the teams about these things. And for example, it's very good that if, for example, if you go in conference, like we will see that we'll talk soon in Manchester, because when you see opportunity to learn and to talk with another guys and to refresh your mind about this type of knowledge, that you need to try to do this thing.
And that's going to be a brilliant linkage. But I'll come back to that one in a moment. So John, thank you for putting into the chat, wanting to make some contributions to the BOE and maybe indices. Maybe I would suggest that you connect with Helber separately and discuss that with him after the webinar. However, now is a brilliant opportunity to link everything back into what we're doing as an authority. And if you want to make contributions and you want to discuss these and the skills that we may or may not be losing, or any other sort of topic of conversation that is interesting for you from a professional competency and professional perspective, is come to the conference. Our annual conference is being held in Manchester on the 14th and 15th of May. Helber will be there. He has a speaking slot along with 45 other presenters. So we have 3 streams: skills, controls, and authority. We have a huge range of discussions, topics that are being shared by our speakers from a very diverse range of speakers as well this year. We will also have Connect Hub taking place across both days, and that is your opportunity to get involved and ask those questions to senior leaders, experts in their field that you might not want to in the work environment. Equally, if you want to give back to industry, please let me know, and I can send you a link for you to say what your skills are that you would like to give back in I'm calling it a speed mentoring opportunity. We did it last year, or the authority did it last year, I would say, on one day. We're going to be doing that over 2 days. So tickets are available. There are 46 speakers. Topics are huge and range vastly. Information is on Eventbrite. It is attached to the slides that you will see after this, and there'll be a link to the tickets and Eventbrite, which give you a lot more information about the conference and what's available. There will also be the PCG networking opportunity on the Wednesday evening. So rapidly heading towards 10 to 1. So give it if there's no other questions that are
I saw one question
specific.
saying that it's possible
Okay.
to attend the conference online. I think
I'm
that
afraid not. We are not making the conference available online. The presentations will be available after the event, and we'll be posting key synopsis, key information and snippets and things after it. But it is very much the opportunity for you to meet face to face, for you to network, so no, it's not available
I
online.
saw another question here. I don't know if we have time to answer.
Okay, no, that's fine.
And
I've got till 1, but carry on.
so first, thank you, Glauco. Glauco is a colleague from my previous company, from Petrobras.
Okay.
So thanks for your question, Glauco. The answer is we can, Glauco, but your questions correlate index for equipment using material composition. This is very specific for Brazil, okay? I didn't see very specific in my current company, my current job, for example, here in UK, my experience that we have exactly the same composition that I saw how I saw in Brazil. But if we have, I think that yes, we can use compositions to build your index. Okay, but what I'm trying to say that what I saw in Petrobras is not always the same thing here.
There's another question actually just come in, which is actually quite interesting, Helber. And having attended the AACE event in London and had a number of conversations with some of the senior members of that region, I think this is particularly relevant. So how relevant do you think are the AACE cost estimate classification system guidelines for use when preparing estimates for UK in infrastructure?
I will answer based in oil and gas and nuclear, okay? Because my career is more based in nuclear and UK. I think that AACE guidelines are very helpful. And for example, we build a tool to analyze the project maturity, and analyzing the project maturity, define the accuracy for that cost model. And we are using the AACE cost estimation classification, our start point. So the start point for our tool, the range that is from AACE. So it's very helpful not only here in my experience in nuclear and oil and gas in UK, but also in South America, what was my previous experience, AACE. This guideline was very helpful as a start point to define your accuracy. But then I think that well, you need to deep diving, try to understand better your industry, your specific requirements to maybe improve. But it's a very good start point.
Lovely, thank you. So if there is no further comments, queries, questions, etc., as said a couple of times and put onto the chat and Q&A, we will share the slides afterwards. And yeah, any other questions, please reach out to Helber. I'm sure we'll be happy to discuss that. And if you want to talk to him in person, come to the conference. And I look forward to seeing you all soon and having connections with you. So thank you for your time today. Thank you again, Helber. It's been really great. And
Thank you.
speak to you all soon.
Thank you,
Thanks, Rod.
guys. Thank you, Rod, as well. Thank you, guys.
Cheers. See ya.
Bye.
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 Oh, it's gone.